Hi everyone. I just came back from the most amazing adventure, and I have to tell you all about it. Guess where? Ethiopia, yeah, way over there in East Africa. Honestly, before I went, I didn't know what to expect. Some people told me it's super old, like one of the oldest countries in the world. Others said it's really different from anywhere else, and you know what? They were all right. Ethiopia feels like stepping into another time, like the whole world just pressed pause here. The mountains rise so high they look like the sky is resting on them, and the valleys are so deep it feels like secrets are hiding there. Some villages are so far away, you can't even reach them by car. You walk for hours, sometimes days, just to get there. And when you finally do, the people welcome you with big smiles, as if you were part of their family all along. Life here is simple but so strong. I met kids my age who wake up before the sun, walk with their goats, and carry water from rivers that sparkle like melted stars. Can you imagine walking miles just to bring water home, and yet they laugh more than anyone I've ever met. Their happiness doesn't come from phones or malls or TikTok. It comes from singing, from dancing, from eating together around one big plate of injera. And oh my gosh, the food. It's spicy and tangy and messy in the best way. You eat with your hands, tearing soft bread and scooping stews that taste like sunshine and fire at the same time. But what really amazed me was how isolated some places are. It's like the rest of the world doesn't even touch them. No Wi-Fi, no rushing cars, no tall buildings. Just mountains, farms, and people who live so close to the earth. At first, I thought, wow, this is hard. But then I realized it's also beautiful. They're not cut off, they're connected. To nature, to traditions, to each other. So yeah, Ethiopia isn't just a country you read about in a history book. It's alive, it's beating. And even though it feels like the most isolated place on earth, it also feels like one of the most real. Ethiopia feels like stepping into another time, and the moment you arrive, it is almost as if the world you know has faded away, and a different rhythm begins to take over. The air itself seems heavier, but not in a tiring way. Instead, it carries a sense of history, of moments lived long before us, of people who have carried traditions for centuries. When you stand in front of the ancient stone churches carved out of the ground in Lalibela, you cannot help but feel that you've slipped into another era, one where faith and patience created wonders without the help of machines. The way people move, the way they dress, the way the villages sit quietly among the mountains, it all feels like time travels slowly here, almost as if no one is in a rush for tomorrow. In the city, there are signs of the modern world: cars, shops, billboards. But once you step out into the countryside, the clock seems to rewind itself. Villages are scattered far apart, huts are built with mud and straw, and smoke rises lazily from small fires where families prepare meals the same way their ancestors did generations ago. Farmers bend low in the fields, guiding oxen with wooden plows, and children carry bundles of sticks for firewood along narrow paths that twist through the hills. You begin to realize that technology has only touched the edges of life here, and that what truly matters is the strength of tradition, the knowledge passed down through families, and the closeness of community. Walking through Ethiopia's landscapes, you feel surrounded by echoes of the past. The land itself is ancient, carved into deep gorges and towering cliffs that look like they were shaped by giants. There are stone walls built without mortar that have stood for centuries, marking boundaries between farms. There are trails that seem too worn to be new, paths used by countless feet over hundreds of years. Even the markets feel timeless. People arrive with donkeys carrying sacks of grain or baskets of vegetables, trading goods face to face with a sense of trust and routine that has not changed in generations. Coins are exchanged, but often so are smiles and stories, because relationships are as important as the items being sold. Everywhere you look, the past lives alongside the present. The music is played on traditional instruments that have been around for centuries. The dances tell stories of harvests and love, and the clothing, bright, hand-woven fabrics, reflects patterns that seem to belong to a history book, yet are worn proudly by people today. It doesn't feel staged or recreated. It feels authentic, as if no one here ever stopped to ask whether they should move away from these customs. Instead, they continue naturally with the quiet power of continuity. For someone visiting, this sense of timelessness is both strange and beautiful. You realize that so much of the modern world is obsessed with moving forward, inventing, replacing, rushing toward the next new thing. But here in Ethiopia, life invites you to slow down. You can sit in a small cafe, drinking coffee brewed in a clay pot over glowing coals, watching the smoke rise as the strong, rich aroma fills the room. Coffee originated in Ethiopia, and the ceremony of making it is not just about drinking a beverage. It is about sharing time together, about waiting patiently while it is roasted, ground, and brewed. Every sip connects you not only to the people sitting beside you, but also to centuries of tradition. When you listen to the stories of the elders, their voices feel like bridges between centuries. They tell of kings and queens, of times when the land was both more difficult and yet more simple, of battles fought and victories won. Their words carry weight, not because they are written in books, but because they are lived memories, carried in hearts and shared across generations. It feels as though history is not just in the past here. It is alive in the present, breathing in every conversation, in every carved stone, in every song. Even nature contributes to this feeling of stepping into another time. The highlands stretch endlessly, with jagged cliffs and flat, topped mountains that look untouched by human hands. The light changes slowly, bathing everything in gold at sunrise and painting the sky in fire at sunset. Wild animals move freely across the land, and rivers carve their way with the same patience they have had for thousands of years. You can stand at the edge of the Rift Valley and look out across the vast landscape, realizing that this is the very place where humanity began, the cradle of civilization, the land that holds the bones of our earliest ancestors. To stand there is to feel a deep pull backward through time, a reminder of where we all come from. In Ethiopia, the sense of another time is not only seen in the physical world, but also felt in the way people live. There is a closeness to the earth, to the seasons, to the sun and the rain. Daily life depends on the land and the sky, and that dependency creates a rhythm older than any clock. It is not unusual to see people working together, singing as they harvest, or children running through the fields, their laughter carried by the wind. These moments remind you that while the modern world often chases after speed and change, there is a kind of strength in holding on to what has always been, in valuing what connects us to our roots. Life is simple but strong in isolated villages, and you can feel it the moment you arrive in a place where the modern world has barely touched. The houses are small, made of mud walls with thatched roofs, sitting in quiet clusters surrounded by fields of green and brown. Smoke curls slowly from cooking fires, carrying the smell of roasted grains and spices into the air. Children run barefoot along dusty paths, chasing each other with laughter so bright it feels like it fills the whole village. At first glance, you might think everything here is too basic, too fragile, but the longer you stay, the more you realize that what looks simple is built on a foundation of resilience. People live close to the earth, and their strength comes not from what they own, but from what they endure together. Each morning begins with the rising sun spilling its light across the hills, and before the sky even turns fully blue, the village is already alive. Men and women step out to the fields, carrying wooden tools, guiding animals, and beginning the long work of tending crops. It is not a hurried kind of labor, but one that moves with the rhythm of the seasons. Seeds are planted by hand, watered when the rains come, and harvested with patience. There is no machine to make the work lighter, no shortcut to speed it up. Yet this very slowness creates a kind of strength, as people learn to trust the land and respect the time it takes to give back. Children help too, carrying water in clay jars balanced carefully on their heads, gathering sticks for firewood, or leading goats and sheep to graze on the hillsides. Their lives are not filled with toys or screens, yet their games are made from imagination and energy. They can turn stones into a playground, a stick into a ball, and the open sky into a place where dreams live. It is not a life of convenience, but it is one of resourcefulness. The strength of these villages is in how every member contributes, no matter how young or old, and how survival is shared as a collective effort. The rhythm of life is tied to nature, and when the rains fall, it is cause for celebration. Villagers dance, sing, and lift their faces to the sky, knowing the crops will grow, the animals will thrive, and food will be abundant. In times of drought, the challenges are heavy, but still the community faces them together. You see women sharing what little grain they have with neighbors, or families gathering in one house to cook a meal that feeds many. It is in these moments that the strength of the village shines brightest, not in what they have, but in how they stand side by side when the world seems hardest. Markets in these villages are not just about trading goods, but about keeping connections alive. People bring what they have, some vegetables, a few eggs, woven baskets, honey collected from hives hidden in the cliffs. They gather under the shade of a tree or in the open square, bartering, laughing, exchanging news. There is no rush, no strict price tags, only the understanding that trade is as much about community as it is about survival. Every handshake, every shared meal of injera and stew, every smile across the marketplace carries the unspoken message that together they are stronger than alone. The simplicity of life here is also visible in the way homes are built and maintained. Families gather to help one another, mixing mud, carrying branches, lifting roofs into place. When someone falls ill or needs help, the village steps in without hesitation. The strength is not hidden in tall buildings or busy streets, but in the bonds that tie people to one another. It is a strength born from necessity, but also from love. At night, when the sun sets and the sky fills with stars, the villages fall into a kind of peaceful quiet. There are no streetlights, no buzzing cars, only the sound of crickets, the distant bleating of goats, and the occasional murmur of voices around a small fire. Families sit together, telling stories passed down through generations, stories of ancestors, of spirits, of lessons learned from the earth itself. Children listen with wide eyes, memorizing every word, because in these tales lies their identity, their history, their guidance for the future. This oral tradition, so simple yet so powerful, keeps the culture alive in ways that books and screens cannot. Even the food reflects this strength and simplicity. Meals are made from what the land gives. Teff flour turned into spongy injera, lentils simmered with spices, vegetables cooked until tender, and sometimes meat shared during special occasions. It is not a feast of luxury, but every bite carries the work of the fields, the patience of the seasons, and the care of the hands that prepared it. Eating is not done alone, but as a family, with everyone gathered around one plate, tearing pieces of injera and sharing from the same dish. It is a daily reminder that life is strongest when it is shared. Children's joy comes from community, not technology, and in the villages of Ethiopia, this truth is visible in every corner of daily life. You can see it in the way groups of children gather together under the shade of a tree, their voices rising in laughter as they invent games with nothing but sticks, stones, and imagination. There are no blinking screens, no buzzing notifications, no digital worlds pulling them away from one another. Their world is right there in the open fields, on the dusty paths, and in the shared moments of play that bring them closer. They are not alone behind locked doors, but surrounded by brothers, sisters, cousins, and neighbors, all part of a network that stretches across the entire village. Their happiness is woven into the connections they build face to face, through stories, through shared chores, and through the simple joy of being together. From morning until night, children play side by side, and the games they create reflect both their creativity and their environment. A pile of stones becomes a target for a throwing game. A line drawn in the dust becomes the boundary for a race. And a single ball made from wrapped rags can keep a group entertained for hours. They don't need batteries, chargers, or fancy toys to keep them occupied. Instead, Their laughter is powered by energy and imagination. The older children take care of the younger ones, teaching them songs, showing them the rules of the games, guiding them as naturally as an older sibling would. It creates a sense of belonging that stretches beyond the family home. Because in these villages, every child belongs to the community, and every adult feels responsible for them. The joy also comes from participation in everyday life. Children are not separated from the work of the adults, but are included in it. When their parents go to the fields, they often walk along, carrying smaller tools or herding animals. When water must be collected, the children go together, chatting, laughing, splashing each other as they balance their jars. These tasks, which might seem like chores, become chances to strengthen bonds, to learn responsibility, and to feel proud of being useful. The shared work is not seen as a burden, but as another way to be together, another reason to smile and talk while the day goes by. Music and dance are a big part of children's joy, and it is impossible to walk through a village without hearing the sound of singing. Children learn songs at an early age, some traditional, some playful, all carrying rhythm and energy. They clap their hands in patterns, stomp their feet, and laugh as they try to keep in time with one another. In the evenings, when the community gathers, children often perform short dances, spinning, jumping, and showing off steps they've learned from their elders. The applause they receive is not just encouragement, but a reminder that their culture and traditions live through them. The joy comes not from performing for an audience of strangers online, but from performing for the people they love and trust. Even mealtimes are full of community joy. Children sit close together with their families, dipping pieces of injera into shared dishes, joking with each other, and sometimes feeding one another with their hands. It is a playful kind of sharing where laughter mixes with the taste of the food and no one is left out. Meals are not quick moments but long gatherings, and children learn that eating is about more than filling the stomach. It is about feeling connected to the group. That sense of being part of something bigger than yourself is what gives the happiness its strength. When the sun begins to set, the play does not stop. Children chase each other in the fading light, their silhouettes moving against the orange glow of the horizon. They make up stories, pretending to be hunters, farmers, or travelers, reenacting the things they see in daily life. Sometimes they gather around older storytellers who share tales of ancestors, heroes, and lessons hidden inside simple adventures. The children listen wide-eyed, their imaginations alive, their joy doubled by the fact that they are hearing these stories together, side by side, not through a screen, but through a voice filled with warmth. Their joy is also rooted in the security of knowing that they are surrounded by people who care. If a child falls, there is always someone nearby to help them up. If one is hungry, another family will share. If someone cries, friends and siblings will gather to comfort them. This deep sense of belonging is what makes childhood in these villages so rich. It teaches children that their happiness is tied not to objects but to relationships. Not to what they have in their hands, but to who they have by their side. At night, when stars fill the sky, children gather again, lying on the ground, pointing out constellations, whispering jokes, and giggling into the darkness. The joy of those moments cannot be bought or downloaded. It is real, alive, carried in the voices of children who know that they are never alone, that their lives are surrounded by warmth and connection. Their happiness does not fade when the battery dies or when the internet is gone, because it was never tied to those things in the first place. Food is shared, spicy, and deeply cultural, and in Ethiopia this truth is visible from the very first meal you encounter. The moment a plate of injera is placed before you, wide and soft like a canvas waiting to be painted, you realize food here is not simply about eating, but about belonging. Injera is the base of almost every meal, a sour, spongy flatbread made from teff flour, a grain that has been cultivated in these highlands for thousands of years. It carries the taste of the soil, the climate, and the history of the people who grow it. On top of the injera are small piles of colorful stews, lentils, vegetables, and sometimes meat, all seasoned with spices that awaken the senses the moment they touch your tongue. Meals are always shared, never taken alone. Families and guests gather around one large plate, tearing pieces of injera with their hands, using it to scoop up bites of stew. The act of eating together is as important as the food itself. To reach across the plate and take from the same dish as everyone else is to affirm connection, trust, and community. Sometimes someone will feed another person with their hand, an intimate gesture known as gursha, which carries deep meaning. It says you are part of me, you are welcome, you are loved. Food in Ethiopia is a language of care, spoken not with words but with flavors and actions. The spices define Ethiopian cuisine and make it unforgettable. Berber, a fiery red blend of chili peppers, garlic, ginger, basil, and other herbs, adds both heat and depth to stews like dora wat, a chicken dish that simmers slowly until it is rich and thick. Mitmita, another spice mix, adds an even sharper kick, often sprinkled over raw meat dishes for those who can handle the intensity. Yet it is not only about heat but about layers of taste. Spices are toasted, ground, and blended with such patience that every bite feels alive. The aromas linger in the air long before the food is served, making kitchens and courtyards smell of warmth and anticipation. Vegetables are also celebrated in Ethiopian food, partly because of long traditions of fasting tied to religious practices. For many days of the year, people do not eat meat or dairy, and during these times meals are filled with lentils, chickpeas, greens, and split peas, all prepared in inventive ways that never feel repetitive. Shiro, a smooth stew made from ground chickpeas or beans mixed with spices, is a favorite dish that brings comfort to both children and adults. These fasting meals show the creativity of Ethiopian cooking, turning simple ingredients into feasts of flavor through technique, time, and community care. Coffee, too, is a central part of the culture and is more than just a drink. Ethiopia is considered the birthplace of coffee, and the traditional coffee ceremony is one of the most important rituals of hospitality. Green coffee beans are roasted over a small fire until they crack and release their rich aroma, then ground by hand and brewed in a clay pot called a jabina. The coffee is served in small cups, dark and strong, often accompanied by popcorn or roasted barley. The ceremony is unhurried, meant to bring people together to talk, laugh, and share time. It is not a quick caffeine fix, but a slow unfolding of connection. A way of saying that being together matters as much as the drink itself. The act of preparing food is also deeply cultural, with recipes passed down through generations, mothers teaching daughters and sons how to measure spices by instinct rather than by spoon. Cooking is not only about feeding the body, but about carrying on tradition. Every family has its way of making certain dishes, small variations that mark identity and heritage. Even the tools, like the mitad, a flat clay or electric griddle used to bake injera, are symbols of continuity, linking the modern household to centuries of practice. Markets reflect the same richness of food culture, filled with piles of fresh vegetables, baskets of grain, spices measured into bright mounds, and the sound of bargaining voices. Here food is not just a product but part of daily life, exchanged with friendliness and familiarity. To shop at a market is to be surrounded by colors, smells, and the hum of community. Ingredients are local, seasonal, and often grown just a short walk away from where they are sold. During celebrations, food becomes even more powerful as a cultural expression. Weddings, religious festivals, and holidays bring entire villages together, with long tables of injera, rich stews, and drinks made from honey or grains. Special animals are prepared, spices are used generously, and meals stretch on for hours as people gather, eat, dance, and sing. Food marks the importance of the occasion, turning it into something that is remembered not just through stories, but through the lingering taste of the dishes that were shared. Isolation creates deep connection with nature and tradition, and nowhere is this more visible than in the far reaches of Ethiopia, where villages are tucked away in valleys, perched on cliffs, or spread across wide highlands that stretch endlessly beneath the sky. Life in these places feels cut off from the speed and noise of the modern world. And yet this very separation allows people to remain close to the rhythms of the earth, to the slow turning of the seasons, and to the customs passed down for generations. Without highways, without constant access to electricity, without the glow of city lights, the land itself becomes the center of life, and traditions act as the guide through time. In the stillness of the highlands, the natural world is not just a backdrop, but a living companion. The mountains rise like guardians, their shadows falling across fields of teff and barley. Rivers carve deep lines into the earth, their waters providing life to farms and families, while also serving as places where children bathe, women gather water, and animals drink. The cycles of rain and drought dictate what can be planted, when it can be harvested, and how much will be stored for the future. People read the sky and the soil the way others might read books or screens, understanding signs of change that are invisible to those who live apart from nature. This closeness forms a bond of respect, because survival depends on listening to what the land says and adjusting life accordingly. Traditions thrive in this isolation because they are not interrupted or replaced by rapid waves of outside influence. The music, the dances, the ceremonies, and the clothing are not things kept only for museums or special days, but remain part of daily life. Women weave fabric on wooden looms just as their mothers and grandmothers did, creating patterns that tell stories of place and identity. Songs are sung in local languages, carrying history within their melodies, teaching children who they are and where they come from. Religious rituals mark the passage of time, celebrated with the same prayers, the same foods, the same gatherings that have been practiced for centuries. Isolation shields these practices, giving them space to survive without being erased or hurried into something new. When people live far from the distractions of modern life, human relationships become the strongest connection of all. Villagers depend on each other not just for companionship, but for survival. A harvest requires many hands, and so families work together in the fields, sharing the labor and sharing the reward. If someone's roof collapses, neighbors gather to rebuild it. If illness strikes, it is the community that steps forward with remedies, food, and care. This interdependence is not a choice, but a way of life shaped by the remoteness of the environment. The strength of bonds is measured not in words, but in action, in the willingness to carry one another through difficulties. Isolation also brings a deeper sense of patience. There is no rushing when roads are long and journeys are slow. Walking becomes a way of life, sometimes taking hours to reach the nearest market or to visit relatives in another village. These walks are not silent, but filled with conversation, with laughter, with songs sung along the path. Travel is not simply about arriving at a destination, but about being present in the journey itself. This slower pace seeps into every part of life, creating space for reflection, for connection with the land, and for appreciation of traditions that move at their own rhythm. The natural world offers lessons every day, and in isolated places, people learn to live in balance with what surrounds them. Herds are grazed carefully so that grass will return, water is shared with respect for its scarcity, and farming practices are shaped by the knowledge of generations. The environment is not seen as something to conquer, but as something to live alongside. This relationship is one of humility, recognizing that human life is small compared to the vastness of the land, and that survival depends on harmony rather than control. At night, the isolation becomes even more powerful, because with no artificial lights, the sky reveals its full brilliance. Stars crowd the darkness, and constellations shine clearly above the villages. Families sit together outside their homes, looking up, telling stories that connect the patterns in the sky to myths, ancestors, and lessons. Children grow up knowing the sky not just as a scientific chart, but as part of their cultural memory. These nights remind everyone of their place in a much larger world, a world that has existed long before them and will continue after them. Isolation does not mean loneliness, because the connection to nature and tradition fills life with meaning. The land gives food, the rivers give water, the mountains give shelter, and the traditions give identity. In this balance, people find a kind of richness that cannot be measured by wealth or technology. It is a richness of belonging, of knowing that each day is tied to the earth and to the wisdom of those who came before.